Hey, thanks for checking out Lambgoat's Vanflip podcast. Make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We also want to give a shout out to our Patreon supporters. Thanks for supporting us, guys. You guys rock. Welcome to the Vanflip podcast. Thank you for joining us today. Once again, we are doing the quarantine special and we are doing webcam interviews. I am joined with Alex once again, and today we are joined with Ryan, who some say is the ringleader and the front person of the band Misery Signals, but also at one point was in Seven Angels, Seven Plagues, even further back in the day. So welcome to the podcast today. Ryan, how you doing?
Thanks for having me, guys. Good to see you guys across the screen here.
You're in Canada, and I think, unless I'm horribly misinformed, you're still in Canada, right?
A couple members of the band are in Canada. I'm not. So we're kind of spread out through the northwest of the U.S. and into western Canada. So I'm actually in Boise, Idaho.
Oh, that makes sense now.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
But you're not wrong. We got Canadian members. We've always had people from Canada in the band. So I can see how you got there.
So you live in Idaho now? How long have you lived in Idaho?
I'm going into my 11th year now. So
how'd you end up there?
My wife's from here.
Oh, well, that explains it.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, maybe they just missed all those barn shows they used to play way back in the day. Maybe that's why.
I don't know jack about Idaho, but hey, that's cool. Well, all right, I apologize. So, I guess you got what's the status of Idaho as far as COVID and the lockdown goes? Like we're on yellow where I am, so some things are open, but like takeout, but you can't dine in, that kind of deal.
Right. Yeah, we didn't get hit too horribly bad, so we're kind of climbing out of that first wave, and they've reopened a lot of stuff, and this week is the first week you can go out and actually like be in a restaurant and that type of thing. So we're kind of on that upswing, but we'll see. It's been a lot of cases spiking up since they reopened things. So.
Yep, that's the case here. That's for sure. We had, I think, 3,000 new cases yesterday just in the county. I'm in Florida, so that's why we reopened things a couple weeks ago, and people are just packed at the beaches here. So it spread pretty quick. But anyway, so it's been a long time coming. You guys have finally started to release new music, and you have a new record coming out in August. So I know you guys have been jamming for a little bit. You guys have teased that you were recording and releasing new music for the last number of years. What took so long between then, when Jesse kind of came back into the band, to now? And are you using any of that material from that time on the record?
Yeah, so Jesse coming back and playing with the band was sort of sprung from our 2014 reunion tour. We wanted to do a 10-year reunion of the first record that we did, of Mouse and the Magnum Heart. So in 2014, we got together and toured, and that's when kind of the idea of throwing this sort of legacy lineup back together and writing music with that iteration of the band again took flight, I guess, right? So, and that was 6 years ago. And between then and now, it's it was only an idea during that tour. And we didn't really kind of start in earnest till a year or a year and a half after that. And we got back together and sort of began writing songs and jamming. And it was sort of a little while between the time where it was an idea of something that we thought could happen and thought would be cool, between then and the time it became something we actually were going to do and believed could happen. So that was the beginning of the delay. And then since then, it's kind of just more of that family life stuff we were talking about, where everyone's sort of in different places geographically in different situations. Mm-hmm. So we were only really able to do it in increments, right? We'd get together for an increment, write some stuff, go back to our homes and, write on our own independently, send some demos and stuff to each other. So there's a bit of a holding pattern to the whole writing process. And then to be honest with you, once we did get together, it wasn't always perfect smooth sailing. As anyone that's been in bands can understand that there's sort of a curve to how these things work. And with our group of people, And particularly myself as kind of a quirky and eccentric person, it took us a while to kind of find what was going to work for this band that was a group of people that's 15 years out from actually having worked together before, so it took us a while to kind of get back in that groove and figure out what the record was going to be and how it was going to sound. So that was kind of the main curve of it.
Interesting. Yeah, it was, I watched the Yesterday Was Everything documentary last night in preparation. So
cool.
You guys have kind of always been kind of low key on the inner workings of the band. So it was interesting to get that kind of glimpse and, understanding for the dynamic. So, I could see how it would be hard for you guys to kind of, be on the same page. And also you guys are all split across the country anyway. So, but, whenever you guys were writing and recording, it always said Boise. So you living in Boise makes a lot of sense now, just because I was assuming it was still Milwaukee and Edmonton. So, but
yeah.
What can fans expect from the new record that will be out, in August? What is it much different with Jesse and the band, the writing process and everything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll address those separately. What they can expect, check out the 2 songs that are out already for sure. Those will give you a good idea. But I think what they can expect is kind of just the most distilled version of Misery Signals that they've had before. It's kind of like, it feels like it's been reduced down to the just most potent parts of what the band is and what works best for us on this record. So I don't know. I think it's an awesome record, and I think that if you got into the band at different album stages, if you've been listening for many years, or if you just got into it on our last record, Absent Light, you're not going to be disappointed by this. There's going to be something there for you because it does kind of reach back to some of those. But I think structure-wise, it's a little more focused than some of our previous records. Some of the songs are a little less wandery, and it just kicks ass from beginning to end as far as energy-wise. So it's a condensed pill of Misery Signals, I would say. And then as far as the difference of Jesse being there, obviously we have his voice and his lyrical contributions on there, and that's something that I think people have connected to for a long time with the band, particularly if you started listening to our band when Malice came out in 2004, a lot of the things that connected and worked for that album were Jesse's sort of easily discernible, kind of easy to connect with lyrics. Not a lot of disguising of his intents or kind of his emotions, and I think you'll find the same thing with this record, as he wrote a lot of cool lyrics for it too. So.
Now, this is coming out in August, and that release, was that settled upon pre-pandemic, or was that the result of the pandemic? A result of the pandemic?
It's been sliding a little bit. Hey, I know you mentioned us teasing the release. We kind of thought we had it all together for something a couple months back, and most of the delays were not pandemic related. But yeah, we had that discussion whether or not we're going to continue to push it further back, because we wouldn't be able to tour on it immediately and those kind of things, which I think a lot of bands are struggling with. But we ended up deciding after some discussion that we were going to kind of keep the release date the same and not let the pandemic push it back further. Just because of anything else, I just think, people who are stuck at home need some music, so if we can give that to them, great.
Angry music.
Potentially we'll make less money on it or whatever, because people won't be able to come to the shows or, aren't able to work and all that, but it's not really what it's about. So it's a pretty easy decision for us to just put it out anyways.
Now, if there hadn't been a pandemic, how much touring do you think you would have done anyway? Sure you would have toured, but you guys aren't road dogs at this point.
Yeah, we're no longer road dog mode for sure. We have 2 tours that are still kind of in purgatory, have been rescheduled, and we're hoping that they're going to be able to stick for the end of the year. And it's about a month's worth of dates just in North America. So So that's a good amount of touring, considering we're going to, tack some other continents onto that as well. So more than I'm accustomed to for the last few years, definitely. But maybe not what I was doing in my early 20s.
Yeah, for sure. Now sorry. What's your full-time job, or what's your main gig?
Right now, so I'm still...
Unless you're living off Misery Signal's royalty checks, but that seems unlikely.
Yeah. Man, I should show you some of those checks that we get from Warner Brothers, like who owns the first half of our catalog, and it's laughable.
Not a lot of zeros on those, huh? Maybe after the decimal point.
Right, the zeros before the decimal point. So I produce and record in a studio, so I work with other bands a little bit on the music side. I also do martial arts, so I teach jiu-jitsu. That's one of my jobs, and then I bartend as well. So kind of a little bit of everything.
Yeah, that's cool. I wanted to take it way back.
Let's do it.
So, as Dave mentioned, you were in Seven Angels, Seven Plagues with Kyle, I guess, and assorted others who weren't in the Misery or didn't end up in the Misery Signals camp. I guess circa 2001, Jasmine's Lullaby days. Mm-hmm. You guys were like, I don't know the right way to put it, a hot commodity up-and-coming band in sort of the metalcore scene. And that album came out. Now, obviously, you might disagree. That's from my perspective. Maybe that's running Lambgoat perspective. There was a lot of buzz. I'll say that.
No, the consensus is true. Yes.
Yeah, a lot of buzz about the band, and you guys put out Jasmine's Lullaby, and everybody seemed to dig it. I dug it. I think Dandelion was probably one of my favorite early metalcore songs.
Awesome.
Matt Mixon version. Nothing against the other Matt, I guess. In any case, then it just sort of seemed to fizzle out, disappear. I guess everything fell apart, and I was just looking for a little background. What happened to that up-and-coming band that suddenly vaporized?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, we'll have to go back quite a ways for that.
In the time machine.
The band started in, 99, and by 2001 and 2002, after Jasmine's Lullaby was out, I would say it started to pick up steam for sure, and there was some interest from people, and towards the very, very end of the band only, though, because we were largely ignored for most of the time the band existed, but towards kind of the very tail end of it, which I guess is why it seems confusing for people that that's when the band broke up or disappeared, but the band just broke up, man. Like a couple of the guys decided that they had a calling elsewhere and didn't want to do it anymore. And
would that be Jared Logan, the drummer?
Yeah, particularly
specifically. In my mind, I kind of feel like he was the first one to leave, and maybe he was extremely religious or something.
Yeah, exactly. So he chose a church-related path and had to leave the band because of it. It was a weird time because that was right when Jesse had joined the band. So Jesse, the first, the singer of Misery Signals, who we've been talking about, was actually coming down to join Seven Angels, Seven Plagues, and had been in the band for, days or, what felt like only days. And one of the first things we were set to do, we had played a couple shows with Jesse, but one of the first big things we were set to do was tour up to Canada and play the memorial show for the guys in Compromise who died in the crash, which, Dave mentioned earlier, the documentary. There's a bit more backstory to that if you're interested in finding out.
Yeah, I was going to say that this was all covered kind of in that documentary, which was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. So if you want more depth to that story, the Yesterday Was Everything documentary, is a good place to source that. But we were heading up to do shows that were commemorative memorial shows for a couple of the guys in the band, compromised, who didn't make it through that crash. And Jared just wasn't willing to do it. He left the band, and then Matt, the other guitarist, didn't want to do the shows as well. So it was kind of heartbreaking for us because it was something that seemed important for us to do. And that kind of drove a big wedge between the group, because it was sort of like an offensive move to a lot of people.
Right.
And fortunately, my brother, who had literally just graduated high school like months prior, and is a gifted drummer, even then, was awesome at drums and could just pick up those songs. And so he filled in for the tour, and we did it with one guitarist as a 4-piece, and just so we could still play those shows. But yeah, that was the kind of, and I don't think there was more than like 12 hours in my life where a band didn't exist. It was like Seven Angels was done, and like by the nenext morning we had like plans for what became Misery Signals, so
I remember getting that EP sent to me, the very first one, 2003, I guess, and that kicked ass. I actually broke that out a couple of weeks ago when I was cleaning my basement, and still kicks ass. Yeah, but so I remember though thinking, this band's gonna go somewhere, and then I don't know when or how far after, but I think you were quickly picked up by Ferret, and the rest is history, I suppose. And then your first album with Jess, well, your first full album, which featured Jesse as well, of Malice and Magnum Heart. That's sort of, and maybe maybe it's my perspective and it's incorrect, but I don't think you'll argue with me. That's sort of an iconic metalcore record. And I was wondering if you had any sort of thoughts on why that record in particular seems to have really resonated with fans.
Yeah, I'll go with that if you want to call it iconic. We'll go with the consensus again on that. So I appreciate it.
I'll agree.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, man. From where I'm sitting, I could point to a few things about that record that are good, but there's like a ton of albums we can do that too, right? Like, what are the strong points of it? But I think just the time that it came out, it was what some people needed, I think, is particularly in kind of the metalcore scene, where there's a lot of, I don't know what I would call like poserdom, and kind of like, I don't know, people just working on their image and trying to do a cool band. You know what I mean? And
see, if I was cruel, I'd make you name names right now, but I won't do that. Maybe offline, I'll ask you.
Yeah, totally. I'll send you some DMs after that. But I don't think that. I think we were fortunate enough to avoid going that route with Malice and make it seem really heartfelt and honest and immediate, rather than kind of image based and I guess hollow, right? Like, in speaking particularly about Jesse's writing and the experiences that he had gone through right before writing those songs, it just kind of lands emotionally. And anytime you can land emotionally, you're already won. It doesn't really matter particularly as much like what the riffs were doing or what the arrangement of the song is. Like, as long as it lands emotionally, like, it's gonna arrive for some people, So that's what I would point to.
Yeah. How much do you think, like, of your core audience, whether it be in Milwaukee and in Edmonton, how much do you think they helped kind of get your band known? Because it feels like you were saying, connect with an emotional level, like with Jesse's lyrics and stuff. And, that album came out fairly, close to post-accident that he was involved in. And also, they lost members of the Edmonton hardcore scene and metalcore scene. So, like, this was also like pre-internet almost, kind of like on the verge of like, message boards were starting and stuff like that. But like you said, Alex heard the EP, so you guys were already sending it off to like, outlets and stuff like that. But how do you think the emotional connection to the actual scenes helped the recognition of your band in the early days? Do you think that played a positive in a dark way to call it, but like obviously the emotional connection with the lyrics and the music,
Yeah, I think it was huge, man. I think word of mouth, like people telling each other, like, I love this, you got to check it out, is kind of the only reason the band did anything, and not to discredit Ferret for, helping us put out those first few records and promoting those. They did an awesome job. But like, in that kind of void before we even signed, if people were listening to our first EP that we kind of self-released, like they were doing it because someone handed it to them. We didn't have marketing or really a label. Is a couple friends of ours from Milwaukee put it out, but it was their first release, right? So it wasn't like an established thing. So I think that was everything for us in the early days of the band, for sure.
Because you guys, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, you kind of led with, like on the EP, the Summer Ending in June, that was on there. And that's like, the kind of like the big song on that album. So it just makes, I always want, now that I watched the documentary, I wondered how much that helped, with the beginning days.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird circumstance to be in, like there's kind of this tragic element to it. And, you want to honor that and not like feel like you're taking advantage of it or anything, for sure. But it's a powerful thing to be able to write about loss, and so it's something that everyone can relate to pretty quickly. So I think that, that's something that landed.
So then after that album, obviously Jesse departed, and you had 3 more albums. I guess I don't have it in front of me. I'm trying to remember which ones. Mirrors came out on Ferret, and Controller was Ferret. And then that was probably, let's see, Absent Light. Yeah, so in between Controller and Absent Light, Ferret, I guess, went kaput, sort of, kind of. And you guys ended up on Basic, right? Which is a strange, seems strange, to the casual metal hardcore observer.
Right.
What happened there? I assume you guys, after Ferret sort of dissolved, I assume there was, you guys could have gone to any one of the usual suspects as far as labels go, or was there some weird contractual obligation somehow? Basic is involved with Warner Brothers, something I'm not aware of, or was there?
Let me speak to that.
Nothing like that.
Basic is awesome. Basic is our friend Barley from London, and what happened after Ferret got sort of absorbed by Warner Brothers, and then like fired from their own label somehow. Is we wanted to kind of just move away in general from having someone else owning our music and putting it out. And so for Absent Light, we did like a crowdfunding thing. We just decided we were going to make all the decisions ourselves and put it out ourselves. And we were pretty much able to do that. And it was a huge learning experience for sure. It wasn't incredibly easy, but it's becoming easier. And it was awesome. I loved it. So one of the challenges we ran into, though, was that we didn't really have networking in other countries. We've toured over there, obviously, and we knew a few people, but most of them, most of the label offers that we had or ways we could have put out the albums would have involved a lot of giving up rights or having other people own our music, which is what we were trying to avoid. So the reason we ended up distributing our music in Europe through Basic is because they were just really cool about the arrangement they were going to have, and they were just going to help us push it overseas where we weren't really able to do that on our own. So they're kind of more of a partner. And I would say we're still a band that's not on a label, as we're kind of making all the shots and literally, paying for everything and, in some cases recording the music, so,
right.
in 2020, Misery Signals is like, a total free agent. Like, we're not really working with managers anymore, not really working with labels anymore. We do some booking on our own, but that's kind of the one place where we reach to other people, like distributing the records overseas. We have help with booking shows. Sometimes we have help with, but otherwise it's like me and Kyle are doing things from our phone. You know what I mean? So
wow, that's cool. Nothing wrong with that.
It's awesome, man. It's the way, and I think I don't know how you make a band start, but like if you have any audience whatsoever, you can do like so much on your own now, man. It's incredibly different than when I started making songs,
Yeah, that seems to be, the case. Obviously, more often than not, you have a lot of bands, established bands that
right.
Sort of go on that road, whether it's Periphery or Clutch or whoever. When you don't need the label to sort of shove that down people's throat in whatever manner they want, which usually involves a lot of money, which you have to recoup. It just seems like cutting out that middleman is, if you have, the time and energy to do some of the grunt work, seems like the way to go.
Yeah, and totally, it is a trade-off, man. I should include the reality of that, because some days I don't feel like doing it, and it is a lot of work. But yeah, if you can manage, man, it's pretty cool because you learn a lot along the way. I feel like this is the second album that we've released on our own, and it's like I feel like we already did it so much better than we did with Absent Light. So
right. And now, so that was 3 albums that you put out your debut LP, and then you released 3 albums with Carl on vocals. Now, I'd be shocked if you hadn't read Carl's statement in August of 2018.
I read it, yeah.
Yeah, which basically, I got to give him credit. He sort of laid bare, everything that transpired from his joining the band to his ouster, if you want to call it that, dismissal, and sort of took a lot of the blame upon himself for I guess some of his insecurity. I don't know how to properly encapsulate it, but some of his insecurities led to changes in his behavior, which was probably perceived a certain way by you guys, and the whole thing just kind of I suppose unraveled. But I was curious as to, what were your gut feelings after you read that statement that Carl put out?
Yeah, man, I was really glad that Carl wrote that. It was, kind of the opposite of what the problem was, which is like I think Carl had a lot of things bottled up that he wasn't communicating. You know what I mean? So it was pretty unexpected to see something as in depth as that. Him putting out publicly, and I think that speaks to him, maybe working on himself and kind of figuring a few things out and figuring out what he needs to do to like communicate that type of thing. Because I think the main, wedge that was in the band when he left, was a big part of it was him shutting down the communication and not like giving us any of that info, and like, so the communication among the band, like if it was anything like that manifesto he was able to write after he left, like I think it could have resulted differently, but it was nice to hear a lot of that, and it was nice to have him kind of assume that role of like taking credit for his part of the kind of I don't know, the gap between us, like
right. Did you guys? I was just going to ask, did you guys communicate after that? Have you communicated in the interim? Have you had any contact with him whatsoever?
I think most people sent him messages after that came out. I sent him a message personally after that came out. We haven't had a huge like reconciling conversation or anything like that, but I definitely followed up with him after I saw that message.
Okay. It's interesting. You go out there on the interwebs, and there's a Jesse camp and a Carl camp, it seems like.
Yeah.
It's amusing. Why Carl should be on this? Oh, I miss Carl, but then, no, Jesse's better, blah, blah, blah. Right. Is that something that you guys ever even entertain or think about it? It's just you guys. Well, I guess the bigger picture. Do you guys generally read what's out there? Are you one of those bands that sort of read things and let that? I don't necessarily. It's not going to make decisions for you, but perhaps influence you one way or another. Not just regarding a vocalist, but if you read a deafening tidal wave of comments saying we need more singing and choruses. Yeah. God, no, don't do that. But does that sort of thing ever play a role for you guys, or are you one of those bands that just no, we're not going there. We're not going to read it because it just puts us down this road that we don't want to travel upon.
Right. I like to think I have pretty good barriers as far as like not letting myself scroll down a comments page very far. With social media, it's a little harder to avoid people's opinions, you know what I mean? Like, because they're arriving in your inbox and in your comments, like, you're getting a notification about it, So I see some of it, and like, I totally get that if you connected to one of the records more than the other, and you have favoritism as far as one of the singers goes, like, I get that, man. I totally get that, because I have the same thing with some bands, and certain eras of their work mean a lot more to me than other eras. So I know that's a reality, and I don't take it too much to heart. I think as far as other members in the band, I'm a little better about like not reading or caring what is being said on the internet. Right. I think a couple, and again, I won't name any names, but I think a couple members are like a little more sensitive to that. But I don't think it messes us up too bad as far as like you're asking if we're going to respond to those and like change what we're doing or write in a specific direction. And I think we've always had pretty good bearings as far as like following, scratching our own itches and following our own visions for the band and not really trying to serve something up for a crowd that right. May or may not want something. And that's just a perception that's, based on some weird small sampling of whatever you've read anyway. So it's better, I think, to ignore that stuff. And I think maybe saying that I do is idealistic, but I try to.
Yeah, well, bravo. More power to you. There's a lot of bands out there, I think, they might not cite you overtly, but there's certainly a lot of bands, I think, that were influenced by Misery Signals. Counterparts is one that comes to mind. You can't really listen to Counterparts and deny the Misery Signals influence. And I think they'll, Brendan and company readily acknowledge that. I was curious, in, your heyday, whatever that is, and we'll say 2000, from 2005 to 2010, those years, what were some of the bands that you guys looked up to in your formative years that maybe not, it's not as if you were trying to emulate them sound-wise necessarily, but perhaps their ethics, their approach, that kind of thing. Are there any bands that come to mind?
Yeah, man. And I guess it kind of depends how far back we go. And I'll probably just speak to me personally. I think other people in the band have other
sure.
things. But like, I think like when I started writing Seven Angel stuff and early Misery Signal stuff, I was still really just entrenched in kind of like that metal and hardcore scene that I was kind of raised on. And I was really interested in a bunch of the bands that were doing stuff that was kind of melodic and still intense and heavy, like Shaihalud and Cave In, and some bands like that. So that's what I would point to early on. And you're talking about kind of 2005 on. I would probably have opened my writing palette a little bit more by then, and would be looking to stuff more like, I don't know, Meshuggah and like Propagandhi and stuff like that.
Right.
Where it's not exactly, where you couldn't mistake it for a Misery Signal song, but there's still elements that would overlap, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. I must ask, Cave In, were you one of those people that were pissed off when they put out Jupiter?
Dude, I was very confused when they put out Jupiter, but I love Jupiter, man. I think it's so good. I appreciate all eras of Cave In. Even the 2019 record, I think, is awesome.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I love Jupiter personally, and
yeah.
But it was amusing how they sort of disavowed briefly
Right.
Disavowed sort of their roots or the heavier side of things to the degree where it's like, we're not even going to play those songs.
I know that band
obviously changed.
They're such a good case study in changing your sound, right? In developing, because it's like,
right.
They're all
so different bands.
Yeah. And they were so young when they started. And then they've the change between Until Your Heart Stops and Jupiter is just so stark. It's I point to that all the time when I'm having that discussion. It's how much should bands change from record to record? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. Yeah, I mean, you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. There's fans that'll applaud your bravery for changing things up, and then there's the other side that'll just, you've not remained faithful to your roots, and we hate you. So
the other good case study, I think, is Radiohead, right? Because being a '90s child, that's another big band for me, and I should point to that whole section of my musical palette too for influence, because Radiohead's a huge band for me.
Yeah,
but they're also a great study of is Kid A the end of the band or the beginning of the band? I don't know. It's a huge discussion.
Yeah, that's a difficult one for me. That was sort of the end, and I don't want to say that derisively. They still have merit and put out good material after that. But I definitely OK Computer is my favorite, and that's kind of a cop out, I suppose. It just is. But it is interesting how they went. They started out super commercial, as that sort of music was at the time, and then just got more obscure and less palpable as time went on. But they did things their way, which I think is pretty much what everybody respects, music aside.
Yeah, totally. And I think you can also think about producers too, because I don't know how much of the public realizes how much a producer's touch changes an album. Changes the way something's perceived, because Nigel Godrich producing those first couple records made them sound kind of how they sounded, and when those other records started coming out, it's you have different people working on the production and stuff like that. So
right. Yeah, well, I'm still pissed at him because I'm a big, not personally, I don't know the guy, but I'm a big, I was a big Pink Floyd fan back in the day, and the Roger Waters, who was, sort of the ringleader of Pink Floyd, at least in their biggest years, hired Nigel to produce his last solo album, and I dig the album, but there's not a single damn guitar solo on it, and it still ticks me off.
Dude,
sorry, I just wanted to vent.
No, while we're on this kind of tangent, I'll give you a fun fact about Misery Signals. In 2011 maybe, we did a Pink Floyd cover for a video game. So if you haven't found or heard that, we covered Us and Them.
Okay.
So you can
did you do it better than Between the Buried and Me?
I would never say a disparaging word about my friends in Between the Buried and Me, but I think we kind of did.
Oh, yeah, awesome!
Interesting. We'll have to check that out.
So, hold on. Okay, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask let's see, that song has a sax solo in it, doesn't it?
Uh-huh.
Do you guys use a real saxophone or a keyboard?
We do.
Or is it like a metal version?
Yeah, it's kind of metally. There's kind of a guitar solo-y version at that point, and then there's a synth thing leading into it. So we sort of split that part up and didn't copy it exactly.
Okay, because that was my only gripe with the Between the Buried and Me version. I mean, they were so faithful, but then to not have an actual saxophone, that still hurts me.
Yeah, we did a little bit more of an interpretation, so we gave it kind of. Which is, kind of ballsy and probably ill-advised when you're dealing with source material like Pink Floyd, one of the greatest bands of all time. But we had to do it.
Well, I'm going to have to dig that up. I don't know why I never encountered that.
I think everyone hated the video game, and it disappeared right away.
Do you remember what video game it was?
It was called Homefront. But I think it was some kind of promotional thing where the songs weren't actually in the video game. They just released an album alongside it, songs inspired by the video game somehow. But it was a bunch of bands of kind of our ilk that were on it. I probably can't think of any at this moment. Oceano was on it, and who else was on it? I don't know. Well, check it out. It's in the dregs of the internet somewhere.
Well, I know where to find those.
You specialize in those, man.
Yeah, Lambgoat.com, I think, is considered the dregs of the internet.
No way.
Pseudo dark web.
So I think, stepping back and looking at the band and your career, I feel like you guys were in that, I'll say, unfortunate position where you were one of the bigger metalcore bands, but not big enough to, not an August Burns Red or an As I Lay Dying, prison stuff aside, but not big enough to, I guess, make a living at it and keep, that's your gig. And I don't know how close you guys ever got to that. Obviously, when you have families and, you get of a certain age, you have financial responsibilities that are not easily met, certainly not easily met the same way they are when you're 22 and in a van and really don't have any expenditures other than yourself. But obviously, some bands are able to get over that hump, and I'm just wondering how close, what is that separation, as far as you guys versus an August Burns Red, someone of that size. You guys are the next tier down, if you will, from a commercial success standpoint. Let me ask it this way. Could you guys have suffered through and sort of, made that your thing, or was there just not enough potential in that realm, whereas it sort of had to come to an end from a career standpoint?
Right. Yeah, man.
And I apologize for not articulating the question in a digestible manner. I'm not sure how to communicate it.
It makes total sense to me, man, because I've always joked that Misery Signals is like the smallest big band or the biggest small band, and we're like kind of on that cusp. And like, yeah, we're big enough to be kind of like known and discussed, but not big enough for me to have any money. So it's like, I think what you're pointing to is like, could we have like pushed it further and like made more of a career for a band that was, that is, somewhat respected and known, but not really, doesn't really have a ton of traction, I guess. And I wonder the same thing, man. Like, I don't really know. And like, I don't even know if would be a good or a bad thing if we had been bigger than we were, right? Like, if the band would have had more gravity, it would have been harder to make some decisions, and my life would probably look a lot different if I was trying to maintain the momentum of, whatever records we did 10 years ago, if those were the defining moment for us, that pushed us into kind of like, a sustainable career path. Maybe we'd be trying to repeat that, and it would have imploded, and we would have made a couple shitty records trying to impersonate that thing that got us attention, right? So it's like, maybe it's a blessing that we stayed the size that we stayed, and like, I have no qualms about it. Like, I'm not disappointed by anything that we've done, or like the quote achievements that we've made. Because I think it's awesome, and I love that people appreciate the band, because I think we have some really, really like passionate fans. Like, I get a lot of like really heartfelt messages from people.
It is very cult-like.
What's that?
It is very cult-like a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a special thing, man. So like, if we had to sacrifice that element of it for me to have been paid more or something, or have played bigger shows, or sold more record numbers, or streamed more, whatever, like I don't know if that would be a good sacrifice.
No, you may well be right. I think that's probably one of the reasons the band is so well respected. You didn't have that era of forced output. There's no perceived try hard aspect to the band, and I think that does definitely play to your favor as far as your legacy goes.
Yeah, thanks, man. I don't think that's some sort of like that's not us making the decision and being like too good for that. It's just sort of, we've always been at that spot, right? There wasn't a moment of truth where it's like, the devil's contract was right there and we didn't sign it. It's just like, this is just the hand we've been dealt, and this is the size we've been, and we just ride it out, So
Yeah, that's pretty much how life goes. Very very seldom does someone sit down and have the master plan and then execute it. It's just the way the freaking ball rolls. But sometimes, as you said, it works out for the best.
I think also the music is a little more cerebral than the bands that you suggested, Alex, like As I Lay Dying and stuff. I think I don't know. There's a lot more emotion, I believe, in like the tone and the structure and just everything to do with the musical part of Misery Signals. So not to say that that's a negative in any way, but it probably does not catch the wide ranging audience that like a general rock band would, capture.
Sure. And I think you nailed it right there, man. It's like, the sort of like quirkiness of it, is the reason that it's loved, but it's also the reason that it doesn't land for a lot of people. So,
right.
So to touch base again, that's something that was kind of interesting to me in the documentary last night. Obviously the documentary follows you guys on the reunion tour, and it seemed like most of you guys didn't foresee Jesse coming back in the band, and it was very interesting to kind of get that look into the band after everything had already transpired. So what kind of led to just him coming back to the band?
I think the main thing was just we had a lot of hatchets to bury, and that happened on that tour. Like we were able to kind of communicate and get over some of the stuff, some of the gripes that forced us to break up when we were a decade younger. And we were able to sort of confront that and work through a lot of it on that tour. And it just seemed like the next logical step to try and heal the relationship of, the whole group of us by sort of putting some more art out, putting some more music out.
Yeah. Does it feel more natural with him in the band? And I don't say that in any disrespect towards Carl, because Controllers is my favorite Misery Signals album. So I am a fan of Carl. But does it feel more natural with Jesse in the band, even though there is like a 10-year gap in there?
Natural is probably not the word. It feels more old school. Like it feels more like the Roots version of the band.
Interesting. Okay.
Sorry, my mic was muted. Obviously, as we discussed, the album comes out in August. We don't know what's going on with the touring world,
right?
By virtue of the health situation, the unfortunate situation. But aside from immediate plans, what do you in your crystal ball? 10 years from now, where do you think Misery Signals will be or won't be? Do you guys still think you'll be releasing material, or, and it's fair to say I have no freaking clue.
Right. Yeah, man. I'm just thinking about this. If I was looking at my crystal ball 10 years ago, like I would have been totally wrong about this album coming out. So I hesitate to answer that.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Nobody knows anything. But you're not one of those people that has a hard cap on saying, I'm not going to be playing metalcore when I reach the age of 45 or whatever the magic number is.
No, I passed my hard cap a long time ago, so I'm just going to keep going.
There you go.
Well, we're coming up to like the time limit we kind of set for each other, but so I just want to run out some of the Instagram questions that we kind of have received.
Okay, yeah, let's go.
What was the most fun recording? I'm assuming record to record is what he's talking about.
I probably, man, it was super fun to do Malice because that was the first time we were in a real recording studio, like with a producer. So I would probably point to Malice. But it was also super fun to do Absent Light because I was trying to figure out how to do kind of all that stuff without guidance, and that was largely self-produced. By me and the other guitarist of the band at the time. So that was fun for another reason because it was kind of exploratory and like free feeling. So both of those were super, super fun.
What is your favorite Misery Signal song?
My favorite Mr. Signal song?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, God. Man.
Us and Them, the Pink Floyd cover.
That's a good one because I didn't write it. Tough, too hard to answer. Can't answer it right now, man.
All right, no, on the spot. Favorite Deftones song?
Oh God, yeah, that's a great question. My favorite Deftones album is Around the Fur, but my favorite Deftones song is probably Diamond Eyes because it's one of the sickest recordings I've ever heard.
That's my favorite album from them.
Nice.
I think tomorrow's the 20th anniversary of White Pony, I think.
Yeah, they're going to do some live stream thing or listening party.
That was I bought at a midnight sale at a record store, like back in the
White
day.
Pony.
Those, yeah.
I don't think I ever went to one of those. My bedtime was always 9 p.m.
You might not be old enough, man.
No, I think we all are. What would your dream tour consist of? Bands still together or broken up?
Holy shit. That's a great question. Probably, I guess I would throw Deftones on there because they're top of mind right now. Metallica would be on it too. Maybe Megadeth, but I'm also going to just put Cave-In on there too.
Interesting.
I just had a quick question I had to ask.
Sure.
That reminded me. Say, what is have you ever gotten feedback or found out that someone, I don't want to say famous, but unexpected was a fan of your band? Other than the Fall Out Boy dudes.
Right. Yeah, man. Honestly, Steph Carpenter put us on a Deftones playlist. He was on satellite radio, and they were all just sitting around I think it was after Gore came out, and they were just hosting a radio hour, and they all went around in a circle and played songs that they liked. And Steph Carpenter put one of our songs off Absent Light on there, and it blew my mind when someone sent that to me, and I was stoked.
Wow.
So
that's kind of recent if it was Gore.
The tour can be attainable.
You guys both have albums coming out. It's perfect.
Yeah,
let's go.
Maybe Gorja can't make it on this rescheduled tour. You never know.
Right.
How was working with Devin Townsend before and now?
Awesome. Devin's the man. He's super cool and so chill, and you would never imagine how kind he is listening to his chaotic music. But he's just the man. It's great. It's the only way it's changed is he's doesn't have weird dreadlocks as a skullet anymore, and he is less stoned.
Yeah. Are you guys still playing Furnace Fest next year?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I'm super looking forward to that too. That's a great lineup.
As of now, we can kind of plan for that, but who knows? You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Fingers crossed, of course.
Would you ever release a tab book?
Yeah. We have plans to. There are plans slowly moving along for that, so you can expect that.
And will you reissue of Malice?
I would love to. Especially since that was sort of a couple, the era that we were on Ferret, they didn't release our records on vinyl, really. So I'd love to be able to put those records back out on vinyl. I don't know if it's possible, but if it is, we will.
Speaking of that, where are those box sets hiding?
Dude, we only made a few and we sold them all out.
I've been trying to track one of those down for years now.
Oh man, I think there's only 500, so you gotta eBay it from somebody for $300.
Yeah, I mean, if they'll put it on there, I'll definitely grab one. But that's the problem. No one's putting it on there.
Yeah.
Do you have any addresses of homes that Dave could invade?
I literally have the addresses of everyone that bought those because I ran the Indiegogo campaign when they ordered them. So
nice. No, I mean,
there you go, Dave.
I've definitely tracked down people on Reddit and Discogs, but I got one lead, but he lives across the country and it's in storage somewhere, so who knows when that will ever happen. But will you ever
just throw your email out there and just say email me personally?
Yeah, if you have a box set,
yeah.
Hit me up, dave@lambgoat.com. Email me. Let's talk it out. Will you ever put the first EP, which we previously talked about earlier, on the streaming apps?
Yeah, so I don't want to spill the beans here, but the 20-year anniversary of that is coming up. So we're hoping to do something special with it at that point.
Do you guys plan on doing any live streams during this lockdown situation, or do you guys get together that often?
We can't, dude. Like, we all live in different spots, so if we travel, it'll be too difficult. But hopefully, I mean, maybe once the travel restrictions and, you know, the opportunity for us to all be in the same, because we have to cross an international border, there's some complications with that because we got Canadians.
Where's your brother live now?
Portland.
Okay.
Oh, not too far away.
Yeah.
Well, not too far away.
Well, not as far as Milwaukee.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, exactly. Milwaukee was much farther. He's a 6.5-hour drive from me now.
Do you have anything else, Alex, you want to add in? Because we're hitting the hour mark. Yeah. So.
No, I want to respect his time. I think we've covered all the important things.
Cool. Well, Ryan, thank you very much for coming on the podcast and taking this much time out of your day with us. Looking forward to Ultraviolet coming out in August. I already got my pre-order in, like a big fanboy I am. And, yeah, man, thanks for your time and appreciate you coming on. I can't wait to see you guys, whether at Furnace Fest or if you guys come down to the south, Jacksonville, or North Florida, that'd be great. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. So it was great to have you on, man.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll get down there as soon as we can. And I appreciate you guys and what you do. And I think Lambgoat's great and you guys do awesome stuff. So, thanks so much for taking some time with me, man. Appreciate you guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Awesome. Take care, guys.
See ya.